Hey everyone, thanks for hanging out with me for today's devotional. As you know, we've been in the famous Last Words devotional series, and this has just been a really cool way to understand the last days of Jesus on earth. And today we're going to read Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 through 39. And it says, "Then Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and he said, 'Sit here while I go over there to pray.' He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. He told them, 'My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' He went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine.'" And here we see Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane after the Last Supper. He's taking time to cry out to the Father about the suffering that he's enduring, and he's asking God to take it away from him. And I love his humanity in this moment because he's feeling the weight of our sin. He's feeling that weight upon him, and he's having this human moment where he's like, "Take this away from me, God." But I love how he says, "But if it's not your will to do that, I want your will to be done." What I love about that is that his main priority was the will of God, even if his feelings didn't line up with that. And I think about that, and I think about all the times in my life where I've been struggling, or, I've had a situation, I've asked God to take it away from me. Rather not go through this, God. But how awesome is it that Jesus, in the midst of the suffering that he was enduring, he says, "God, you know what? I want you to take this from me, but if it's not your will, that's okay. I want your will to be done." God's will was his priority. What's cool is the name of that garden, Gethsemane. It literally means olive press. Much like the process that an olive goes through, there Jesus was, and he was literally being pressed and crushed by the weight of sin to the point of death, is what he says. And yet, even then, he surrendered. He said to the Father, like I said, "Not my will, but yours." How much more should we surrender the things that we're going through in our life? We'll never have to surrender more than what Jesus has. That should be a reassurance. That should be something that brings us peace in our minds, that he handled that for us, that we'll never have to surrender more than he did. And the good news is this: since his surrender to God resulted in death, every time that we surrender things to God, it always results in life. We get life more abundantly because of his surrender to death. Is there anything that you need to surrender to God today? Is it a situation, or a loss in your family, or a sickness, or a relationship? Let's make a decision. Let's make a commitment to continually live a life of surrender, knowing that our little sufferings are nothing compared to his. And you know what? Because of his sacrifice, we can stay surrendered and walk in peace and live in freedom today. Let's ask God to help us live surrender today. God, we just thank you, for what you did, sending Jesus to the cross. God, to bear our sin and shame. The weight of our sin was upon him, and he surrendered, even to the point of death. And God, we just thank you for what that means to us, that we get to live in life, that we get to have abundant life, that we get to live in freedom, that we get to walk in peace. God, I pray you help us surrender those things that are difficult. God, that we know that you ultimately have all the control, all the power. And God, when we put them in your hands, you know exactly what to do with them. We thank you. We trust you today in Jesus' name. I hope you have an amazing day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.